Universitae Hiberniae Nationalis. Pre honorabilis cancellariae totaque universitas, hic comitia universitaria hodie convocata sunt, ut hic vir maxime eximius ad gradum academicum admittator. Doctoratus in utroque iure, Dr. Michael Murphy, pro vice cancellarius, praesentabit José Manuel Barroso.
Alas ordvere, a hansel an halskal an áisiúnta, a hánaiste, a hachtaí dála, a na dóirí agus a cóir lóirí, a gcuine úsle agus a bhainte na halscaile. Is múr an or domsa, fáilte criúil of ara roimh go léir. Chuig olscail Corcaí an ócáid starúil seo, chun céim onig a bhranna uachtarán Comisiún na Hórpa an túsal José Manuel Barroso. Chancellor, in this hall on May the 12th, 2008, José Manuel Barroso, the 11th President of the Commission of the European Union, engaged with an audience of UCC students and staff on the future direction of Europe. There was a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty in the offing, and while the President may not have swung the minds of the Irish who were not present in the hall, he certainly left an indelible impression on those who were here. With eloquence and energy and with force, he conveyed the passion of his personal commitment to the ideals of Schuman and Monnet, of a Europe of united peoples rather than united states, a Europe prosperous and at peace. And he reminded us that he had been born under a dictatorship in his native Portugal, a country that shared poverty and a bleak, introverted political and social framework with Ireland of that era. Both countries, he pointed out, were subsequently transformed by the European community, but both countries would sustain their progress only through enthusiastic, committed membership of a European Union that is open, democratic, led and organized effectively. On that day, the audience was enthralled, and there was a consensus that we should have him back. But as Harold Macmillan famously stated, events, dear boy, intervened and conspired to delay his return. The President is the head of the European Commission, and that's the executive branch of the European Union. He is responsible for allocating portfolios to members of the Commission and has the power to reshuffle or dismiss them. He determines the Commission's policy agenda and all legislative proposals it produces, and only the Commission can propose European Union laws. So as a consequence, he is the most powerful office holder in the European Union. By October of this year, after 10 years in office, President Barroso will match Jacques Delors as the longest-serving holder of the presidency, since it was established back in 1958. Now, of the first 10 presidents, Delors is credited by most as having been the most successful, and in that he gave the community a sense of purpose, a sense of direction, and a new dynamism after the doldrums of the 1980s. But when the history of his term comes to be written, José Manuel Barroso can lay strong claim to have competed with Delors not only in duration of term, because under his leadership, 11 new countries have been integrated into the Union, creating a global economic and political powerhouse of over 500 million people, citizens who represent almost a quarter of the entire global GDP. The EU is the largest provider of foreign aid in the world, and in 2012, it was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, recognizing 6 decades of contribution to the advancement of peace and reconciliation, democracy and human rights in Europe. And President Barroso, along with President Van Rompuy, made the acceptance speeches. Beyond enlargement, his greatest legacy will be the extensive reform of the modus operandi of the EU, which he has shaped, shepherded, and implemented initially through the Treaty of Lisbon. The result, a union that is more efficient in its decision-making, better positioned to affect its global geopolitical agenda, now exhibits a healthier and more sustainable relationship between the executive, the Commission, on the one hand, and directly elected representatives in the Council and Parliament on the other. There is little doubt that had these reforms not been made, the outcome of the unprecedented euro crisis of the past 5 years might have been very different. The early response to that crisis consisted of individual countries effecting decisions that were decidedly in their national self-interest. The final resolution, a redesign of Europe's financial future, was drafted quietly by the Barroso Commission, and their plan formed the basis for the communiqué from the G20 in London in 2009. That set the new rules for global as well as European financial order, and the EU completely overhauled its legal framework. Within the Eurozone, steps towards banking union began, while across the EU, limits on annual government deficits were agreed, along with unprecedented coordination of annual national budget plans supervised by the Commission. In an interview in 2009, at the height of the crisis, President Barroso set out his clear vision for the future, and I quote, "We need open, competitive market economies, but at the same time with effective regulation and supervision. An important level of social commitment, strong international institutions, and mechanisms of corporate governance, that is the economic culture of Europe." End of quote. So now in 2014, the Eurozone has not broken up, it has enlarged. Economic growth is returning and jobs are being created across the continent, and more countries still wish to join. So if the President wishes for an epitaph after 10 years, he might well consider the one used originally for Christopher Wren, si monumentum exegeris circumspice. If it is a monument you seek, look around you. José Manuel Barroso was born in Lisbon in March 1956 in Salazar's Portugal. He inherited political activist genes. His grandfather, a monarchist, had fled Portugal for Brazil in the early 1900s. His accountant father and his schoolteacher mother gave him a fairly comfortable professional childhood. He read law at the University of Lisbon and he graduated top of his class. But the political activism gene was awakened. Like many students of his era, he did not relish the repressive influence of a bureaucratic and military elite that ruled 1970s Portugal, and he joined the Maoists, though he describes his political philosophy at the time as more centrist reformer. And parenthetically, for younger members of the audience, Maoists were also the largest political party here at UCC in 1973. And I must admit to buying my copy of Mao's Little Red Book in Ljubljana in the same year. Ireland was not dissimilar to Portugal at that time. The President was an active activist. He once related fleeing from an armed military convoy that had arrested him, with the belief that they would not shoot him in the back. And obviously this confidence was justified. However, with increasing maturity and study, his politics shifted somewhat to the right and he joined the Democratic Popular Party in Portugal, but he never strayed far to the right of centre, in your own view, President. Further studies followed, a diploma in European Studies and a master's in political science from the University of Geneva, and later a period of research at Georgetown University in Washington. And this personal American experience probably shaped an unwavering commitment to strong, mutually enhancing political and economic ties between the United States and Europe. In 1985, while studying at Georgetown, he was recalled home to take up his first political appointment as Under-Secretary of State for Home Affairs, which was the first rung on a political ladder which saw him rise to be Prime Minister of Portugal within only 7 years in 2002. And if that sounds meteoric, consider that within only 2 more years, he became President of the EU Commission. How, you might ask, and what skill set underpins this extraordinary success? Well, thousands of journalists have written tens of thousands of column inches on the President's personality traits, but I prefer to cite an academic paper from 2010 by Dr. Julian Middelhoff from the University of Antwerp. Middelhoff applied the Million inventory diagnostic criteria to 10 European leaders. And summarizing a very long piece on Mr. Barroso, the President scored very strongly on interpersonal relations and expression domains, and in personality type, he apparently exhibits significant scores for the dominant, the dauntless, the ambitious, and accommodating behavioral patterns. And I quote from Middelhoff, "Overall, we conclude that the President of the European Commission appears to have an ambitious, outspoken, but overall fairly balanced personality." So that's the scientific view. President, I might also point out that you can read all about Chancellor Merkel and Prime Minister Cameron and their strategies, their strengths and their weaknesses in the same article. Maybe of some use. Speaking of science, I now wish to highlight what may well be his greatest legacy. Many will cite union expansion, administrative reform of the union, single market for services, restructuring of banking, harmonization of budgetary processes. But I will argue that it is the promotion of research, of education, and of innovation that has and will have the greatest impact. Science, too, was in the President's genes. Many of his family had been professors of mathematics, medicine, science. His mother wanted him to be a professor of law, though he admitted in a Financial Times interview a few years ago that he would have preferred literature. He did become an academic, spending several years as an assistant professor of law in Lisbon, and of course later at the University of Geneva and in Georgetown. And he was active in academic politics. But those who have followed his career know that his passion for education and for the role of academe is tangible. In June 2009, he was inducted to the Honorary Senate of the Lindau Foundation of Nobel Laureates. And there he set out that pressing global problems, such as climate change, will only be addressed if dialogue between politicians and academia is stepped up. And at Lindau, he celebrated a commitment to have extensive contacts with academics everywhere in the community during his term. In the 10 years, he championed implementation of the European Research Area, which is effectively a single market for science, and he envisaged at its outset, I quote, "a genuine European research area that will abolish fragmentation of effort, streamline cooperation, and create critical mass. We want Europe to be the continent of choice for talented young scientists from around the world." End of quote, and now we have that. He fostered the establishment of the European Research Council to support only the most excellent of research, selected by peer review. And it was his commission that played a critical role in promoting growth in funding for research through Framework 7 and most recently Horizon 2020, in the face, it might be said, of fairly staunch opposition from members of the Council. Throughout his term, opportunities for cross-Europe mobility of students and academic staff through the Erasmus programme has thrived, and the President personally can take most of the credit for the establishment of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which is a key element of the Lisbon strategy for an innovative Europe, driving job growth, competitiveness, and social well-being. So there is hardly an aspect of trans-European education, research, and innovation that doesn't bear the mark of his personal interest and support. It is apt that we honour the EU President, Commission President at UCC. 42 years ago, in 1972, Irish membership of the EEC was championed through a referendum by the Taoiseach of the day, Jack Lynch, also a law student in his time and at this university. Membership of the community transformed Ireland, its universities and UCC. For 40 years, not a building was erected on this campus without European co-funding. The legend, project aided by EU structural funds, has featured on every hoarding of every building site at UCC for 4 decades. And even in the past 5 years, our Higher Education Authority has estimated that some 150 million euros of European money were spent on infrastructure and running costs of our campuses. During the past 5 years alone, UCC has earned some 63 million euros for research from the Framework 7 programme. Now, over all those years, we have acknowledged the contribution of the Irish taxpayer and the Irish government. The Irish universities collectively honoured Chuck Feeney of Atlantic Philanthropies for his support. However, we have never formally acknowledged the contribution of the European Union and our fellow European taxpayers to the conversion of our Irish institutions from colleges to universities. And through honouring President Barroso this evening, we wish to recognise the extensive support that the EU has provided to UCC and our fellow Irish universities, which went on to enable us to play our part in growing a world-class higher education sector in Europe. Osgailingar of Míle Maithagad, Uachtaráin, 1,000 thanks to you, President, and to the Union that you represent. We never complete a citation at UCC without some reference to the human characteristics of the honoree, and President Barroso and his wife Margarita have 3 sons and 1 grandson. One son seems to be taking after his father's early traits, because it was noted widely that as a student in London in 2009, he somehow found himself among the protesters at the G20 summit. And while his father was shoring up capitalism within the building. He likes a good red wine from the Douro Valley. He enjoys an odd visit to York House restaurant in downtown Lisbon. He takes an interest in modern art, enjoys good music, especially opera and jazz. His diary is fiercely protected by many, including Catherine Day, the Secretary General of the Commission, of whom we in Ireland are immensely proud. And she refused to divulge which football team in Lisbon was supported, Benfica or Sporting Lisbon, we may hear. Catherine is aware of the role of the Skibbereen Eagle in keeping an eye on the Tsar of Russia, and she is wary of inquiries from Cork on personal matters. So, to conclude, Chancellor, I have the honour and the pleasure to introduce to you, for the conferment of the degree of Doctor of Laws, José Manuel Barroso, a son of Portugal, for 10 years President of the European Commission, and consequently the architect of our destiny for decades to come. a champion of education and research, an independent thinker of the kind we celebrate at UCC, and at heart, a fellow academic. And I might ask the President to rise. Pre honorables Cancellaria totaque universitas. Presento vobis hunc meam filium, quem scio tam moribus, quam doctrina habilim et idonium esse, qui admittatur honoris causa, ad gradum doctoratis in utroque iure tam civili quam canonico, itque tibi fide mea testor expandeo, totaque academiae.
Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Kelleher, Taoiseach, my friend Eamon, Dr. Manning, Chancellor of National University of Ireland, Dr. Alpin, Registrar of National University of Ireland, Dr. Murphy, President of University College Cork. Allow me also to recognize the presence among us of my compatriot, Professor Maria Helena Nazaré, President of the European Universities Association. And allow me also to recognize the presence among us of your compatriot, Catherine Day, Secretary General of the European Commission, that comes with me today here to Cork. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking you all. I am deeply grateful to be awarded this honorary degree from such a prestigious and dynamic university. Dr. Murphy, thank you very much for your extremely kind words. I was really impressed by the investigation you have made, because I know that you are professor of medicine. But listening to you, I think you have the qualities of an historian, a political science, I would even say a lawyer. This shows that this university is certainly very committed to interdisciplinary studies. But in fact, I was very moved by some of the points you made. You even discovered some sources in academic papers about my political biography. Afterwards, I would like to have those quotes because I did not know them. But the best thing I can say to you after listening to such kind remarks is that if my mother could be with us here today, she will be very, very happy. Thank you very much for your kind words. Some time ago, I was informed about the honor that he decided to give me, and I'm glad tonight to be able to keep my promise and come back to University College Cork. And speaking of Cork, I'm delighted to be back in the People's Republic. I'm told by some that this is the real capital of Ireland. I know that this city has had more than its fair share of successful sports people, from Roy Keane, I remember well Roy Keane. I'm told that some consider Dennis Irwin as even a comparable player. Also Sonia O'Sullivan, and of course former Taoiseach Jack Lynch. And I've heard of the luck of the Irish. Personally, I still believe that if you want the right results in sport or in anything else in life, nothing replaces hard work and keeping your eye firmly on the goal. But you'll be pleased to hear that just to make sure this evening goes smoothly, I was careful not to cross the quad. I have not even set foot on the grass. When I was last here in April 2008, it was for a debate on why young people should be interested in the European Union. And since then, so many things happened. And today I would like to share with you some reflections on the sweeping changes we are going through across Europe, and on the important role that knowledge, education, and innovation must play in our future economy, on what the future holds for Ireland as a country which has turned the corner on the crisis and can play a key role in the wider European recovery, and why it matters, and on why it matters today, as never before, that people of all ages make their voice heard on how they want Europe to evolve in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the European Union is fundamentally about providing good jobs, higher living standards, and a better quality of life for all Europeans, for today and for the future. It is also about upholding European values in the world. Today we are emerging from the worst financial, economic, and social crisis since the start of European integration. And that has clearly put our European model to the test. Many people even predicted that the euro area would break up. But we have proven them wrong. We stuck together and supported each other. Europe shows the right path, responding to the crisis by stepping up the structural reforms needed to get in today's modern, global, digital, competitive world. And then when you see what is happening in Ukraine at the moment, you realize the powerful attraction of the European model. While we are very self-critical, and we need to be, millions outside our borders want what we take for granted in terms of standards of living, freedom of speech, freedom to protest, the rule of law, free and fair elections. And speaking about Ukraine, let me tell you that I'm happy that just today the European Commission was able to approve a financial package of at least 11 billion euros for that country. I hope that tomorrow there will be a strong and united response of all the heads of state and government of the European Union to the problems of Ukraine. We will demonstrate our solidarity to the Prime Minister of Ukraine that will be in the meeting with us tomorrow in Brussels. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe has been through testing times, but I believe the fundamentals are right, and we know what we have to do. We have to correct the imbalances of the past and lay sound foundations for healthy, sustainable economic growth. Our aim is a job-rich future for young people here at this university and all around Europe. We have learned painful lessons from the crisis. We learned that growth fueled by debt, public debt or private debt, is artificial and unsustainable. That latent internal competitive imbalances make the European Union, and the euro area in particular, vulnerable to deep economic shocks. And we saw that a common currency has to be backed up by strong coordination of economic and budgetary policies if it is to survive. So we have worked for a safer, sounder financial sector that should better serve the real economy's needs in a way that is both responsible and fair. We are delivering on the promise that the taxpayer will not be called upon in the future to bail out banks that get into difficulty. Now, for countries in the euro, we have effective tools to act against budgetary irresponsibility, to target macroeconomic risks, to push for profound structural reforms, with the threat of strict sanctions if countries fail to follow sound policies and risk creating problems for their neighbours. And we have stuck together. It was thanks to European solidarity that we could help the most vulnerable countries inside and outside the Eurozone. All these decisions would simply have been unimaginable 5 years ago. And Ireland, through its successful Council presidency last year, very ably steered by Enda Kenny and Eamon Gilmore, has played a leading role in delivering many of them. Today, our efforts, based on a renewed sense of shared solidarity and responsibility, are starting to pay off. The latest Commission economic forecast points to a strengthening of economic growth across Europe as the recovery gains ground. And no need to say that Ireland is clearly a case in point. 2013 was a good year for Ireland. First of all, a great presidency of the Council, which was universally admired for its professionalism and effectiveness. And then, a successful exit from the economic assistance program. Economic growth has returned. In 2011 to 2013, Ireland grew faster than the euro area as a whole. We predict that Ireland's GDP will increase by 1.8% in 2014 and by 2.9% in 2015. And we have been lately made revisions upwards of our former predictions. There has been a significant decline in employment. Although 12% is still too high, there has been a sharp fall from the peak of 15% in 2012. Private households have saved more and are less indebted, and house prices have started to recover. I know very well it has not been easy. Let me tell you that I really admire and respect the courage and resilience of the Irish people. I know that families have made big sacrifices. But Ireland has shown that it can be done if there is a determined effort across all parts of society and politics. And you had precious solidarity and financial support from the European Union and its member states, always with very committed institutions advocating the case for Ireland. Because while some like to portray Europe as being obsessed with austerity, in fact, budgetary responsibility has always been accompanied by solidarity. I would like the word solidarity to be the word that spontaneously comes when people speak about the European Union. Over the past 7 years, Ireland has received nearly 14 billion euros in European Union direct budget support for agriculture, but also for social and infrastructure investment, as well as research. Given Ireland's legendary ability to secure good outcomes from European funding, in fact, Ireland is almost always the first among all the member states in terms of effectiveness of European structural funds absorption, I am sure that Ireland will continue to perform strongly in drawing down funds under the new programming period that has just started. And since 1994, the European Union has contributed 1.3 billion euro to supporting ongoing efforts to build lasting peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland and the border regions of Ireland. The task force I set up in 2007 has been successful in helping the region to engage more fully with the European Union and to reap the benefits of European policies, European funding and networking. Because the European Union is not tied together by treaties alone, but by solidarity and the day-to-day cooperation across borders between communities and regions. That is peace at work. And I remain indeed very proud that in 2012 the European Union was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. It was probably one of the most emotional moments of my life when, representing the European Union together with my colleagues, I received in Oslo, on behalf of course, our union, that most distinguished prize. As a Portuguese citizen, I have seen firsthand in my own country the difficulty of working through a crisis and the personal and social hardship that comes with it. But I'm confident that both your country and mine will emerge much stronger from these key reforms, because more competitive, because more prepared to face the very tough global competition. Ireland is now well placed to pick up on this recovery. Over the past 40 years, membership of the European Union has opened markets for Irish businesses and created jobs for Irish citizens. Ireland has been influential in shaping European policies, from the single market to trade, from enlargement to employment. And today, Ireland's experience and expertise can directly benefit other European countries who are still working through their programs. They are interested in the way you helped bring about an effective turnaround. The OECD is increasingly citing best practice examples drawn from the Irish economy, including, by the way, in the field also of science, education, and innovation. Ireland has returned to normal in European terms, and I really expect it to engage and to use its influence in Europe to help us shape the right policies for the post-crisis era. Ladies and gentlemen, I've talked about the progress that has been made here in Ireland and right across Europe. We are on the right track, but we still have some way to go. Indeed, we cannot say that we are out of the crisis when we still have such high levels of unemployment. It is crucial that we stay the course and keep up the pace of structural reform to ensure our future competitiveness, sustainable jobs, and the well-being of our societies. There is no room for complacency when so many people, especially young people, have been looking far too long for a job and are struggling to get better living conditions. Tackling unemployment is a matter of urgency for the sake of our future, our prosperity, our social cohesion. It is, of course, the member states who are in the front line here. Just today, the Commission has published an in-depth review which identifies the need for labour market reforms and more progress with further education, training and reskilling as priority areas for Ireland. But Europe can and is helping. The European Commission has taken action to help ensure that all young people under 25 are offered a job, apprenticeship, traineeship or continued education within 4 months of leaving formal education or becoming unemployed. This youth guarantee was adopted by all member states during the Irish presidency in record time. Youth unemployment currently accounts for 24% of all unemployment in Ireland. So I'm pleased the Irish government has recently issued a detailed plan to implement the youth guarantee here, and I'll follow progress closely. And to support this, we have made €6 billion of European money available to target specifically the regions most affected by youth unemployment in Europe, including, of course, in Ireland. Then, looking at the mid to long term, we have to get ready now for tomorrow's jobs and new sources of growth. We live in a knowledge-based global economy, which is why universities like UCC are so important. All the three elements of the knowledge triangle, education, research and innovation, must be combined if Europe is to maintain a competitive edge. We want the next big internet platform, e-service or mobile device to come from Europe. This is why education, research and innovation are at the very heart of the Europe 2020 strategy, our European blueprint to gear up Europe's economy for sustainable growth and jobs. We are working to create an environment of academic excellence and foster the necessary links between the world of education and the world of work. We have to get better at matching the supply of skills with labour market needs. We have to step up our investment in the skills of the future. We know that many of the jobs that will be generated over the next 2 decades do not exist today. The digital economy offers huge potential. I'm reminded that the first professor of mathematics here, at what was then Queen's College Cork, was George Boole, who laid the foundations for the digital age. But although the number of digital jobs is growing by 3% each year, the supply of qualified workers is shrinking. At a time of such high unemployment, how can it be right that Europe faces a gap of 900,000 unfilled ICT jobs in the coming years? I'm pleased that many companies have made pledges to provide new opportunities for digital skills and training within the Grand Coalition for Digital Jobs, which I launched precisely during the Irish presidency of the Council. And looking a little closer to home, public institutions and private companies in and around Cork are on track to have received more than 77 million euros in European research funding since 2007. This money is supporting some 253 projects and many more jobs, including in local businesses. University College Cork alone is involved in 183 projects, bringing some 60 million euros to its laboratories and research facilities, and I congratulate you for that. As part of this successful operation, the Tyndall National Institute for ICT Research really stands out. It has secured 42 million euro in funding by taking part in more than 81 projects. I am pleased that the European Union will continue to support research and education in Cork. The new Western Gateway building, which will shortly be opened, has benefited from 25 million euro in European Union funding. And I know that those of you involved in research and innovation are now working hard on your proposals for funding under our new Horizon 2020 program. In fact, one of the jewels of the crown in the new MFF, the new multi-financial framework. And indeed, the European Commission had to fight hard to get the necessary consensus among all our member states for that very important program, Horizon 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, over these last 6 years, the European Union has been in the eye of the storm. We are emerging, I believe, stronger, better placed to manage interdependence and with economies that are gearing up to provide future growth and jobs. And I think we can say that we are emerging together, united. And I believe Europe will remain united, but also open and stronger. In this regard, I would like to make one thing clear. The European Commission has always been on the side of Ireland. One could even say one of your best friends. During the European Union IMF program, I personally made the case to other European leaders for lower interest rates and longer maturities on Ireland's loans. I can tell you that sometimes at least one of these phone calls took about 1 hour. It was also about Portugal. But I would have done it also if it was just for Ireland. And I've always said that the commitments euro area member states made in June 2012 should be fully respected. Not just in terms of the letter of the agreement, but also in terms of the spirit. This is a message I'm happy to repeat here tonight. The European Commission will continue to stand by Ireland now that you have exited successfully the program. And let me conclude on a crucial point. Europe is not something that happens despite the wishes of European peoples. No, Europe has to be built in partnership with and for the member states and European citizens. That is why I'm so keen that there is a real debate on European issues from a European point of view with European citizens. I've been constantly saying, including in many other places like this one, so in some of the prestigious universities of Europe, but also addressing other audiences, that Europe is not just Brussels or Strasbourg or Luxembourg. Europe is also Cork. Europe is also Ireland. And I think a point that we have all to agree is to have this responsibility together. Not speaking of the European Union as a kind of a foreign power. No, we are all members of the Union. We all have our responsibilities, including, of course, the politicians, the political leaders, that sometimes they tend to recognize that. In other cases, this is not the case in Ireland, it is very common to say that when things go right, it's the merit of national politicians. When things go wrong, it's the problem of Brussels. The so-called nationalization of success and Europeanization of failure. This is very important, the idea of responsibility. All of us, and I say when I mean all of us, I not only mean political leaders or policymakers, I mean the citizens, civil society, the universities. And I can tell you that Ireland is a country that is clearly punching above its weight in the European Union. So my appeal to you and to all our fellow citizens in the European Union is when there is a disagreement, please engage. Never turn your backs on Europe. I think it's extremely important to engage in that debate. In Dublin, last year I took part in a lively and engaging dialogue with people from around Ireland. The Taoiseach was there with me. The first in a series of debates taking place across Europe over the past year. And I hope that the discussion will intensify as we approach May's European Parliament elections. We know from our European history that it is always important to hold on to our dreams and ideals. Nothing worth having is easy to get. And we know from epigraph, Yeats chose for his 1914 collection of poems that, and I quote, "In dreams begins responsibility." As we are in a year of European election, it is the moment for each of us to take our responsibility. Democracy is about active citizenship of people of all ages. You hold Europe's future in your hands. You have a key role to play in building a vibrant society, a vibrant Europe, a better Europe. In the past, the Irish people have sometimes expressed specific concerns about one or the other aspect of European integration. Your voice was heard. Changes were made. Because the European Union certainly is not perfect, there are things that we can and are changing for the better. There are some things we should do more of, and other things in which Europe does not need to meddle. So whatever you think about Europe, speak up. Don't stay indifferent or silent. You can make a difference in Europe and contribute to driving change and building a brighter future. So I'd like to make through you, also to all Europeans, an appeal to use your vote in the May European elections. Decide that you will influence your own destiny and not leave it to others to decide for you. This is your opportunity to get Europe you want and deserve. So I hope you will not miss it. I think this is important for Ireland, and I would say, I'm sure, it's very important for us in the European Union. I thank you very much for your attention, and of course for the great honor that you have given to me today. Thank you.